Candace, I'm so grateful that you were able to connect with me today. And I had the pleasure of meeting you through my girlfriend Giselle, which was through another network of people that I've known too, right? And I love sharing this because of how the connections, the network, the community, and stuff just all works together. And you have an incredible journey, and I would love for you to share that with the people listening and watching to this. So I would love for you just to start off, who is Candace today? And then, I want to touch a little bit on your memoir and how you became to get to where you are, starting with your memoir, why you wrote it, etc. So who are you today, Candace?
Who am I today? That's a good
Yeah.
question, Jonathan, because I do think we grow, right? We transform over time. But I wanna go back for a second and just say I share your, um, just love of how connections lead us to more connections and the community that that creates. I actually heard your girlfriend Giselle on What the Nail podcast, which led me to Giselle and then now to you. So it's just fun to see those connections form and what can come out of it and who we can reach through it. So, who am I today? Well, I am a woman who loves helping other people in actually dark spaces of healing, of trauma, of looking at their story. A lot of the women that I work with, and I work with men too and couples, are more middle age, not all of them, but it's this point where people say, "Is there more?" Or, "How did I get here?" Or, "Gosh, it's been so hard. Am I missing something?" And so this is where I found myself in 2019, 2020, actually before the right right before the pandemic hit. And I took a deep dive into my story, into my journey. I was bumping up into what we call reenactment patterns, if you have unhealed trauma, and I just found the right help, and where I'm at today is just so grateful. That's who I am. I'm a very grateful woman that found the help that she needed to get to do what I get to do today.
Great. So reenactment trauma, is that what you said?
Well, so reenactment patterns.
Patterns. Okay.
Yeah. So when we've had, I work with a lot of people. I mean, most of my work is helping people heal from early childhood trauma. And a lot of times we don't even know that there's something that we're still needing to heal from cognitively. But we have these patterns in our lives that are maybe consistent or maybe just pop up every few years. But it's something of a sense of it's painful. Like, why do I keep doing that? Why am I staying in these negative thought patterns? Why can I go years and then I'm back to this same mountain, if you will, circling the same mountain? And can I ever experience something different, which I call true freedom? That when we heal from trauma, what happens is we slow down and those decisions or choices or thought patterns that have been problematic, we realize, oh, we have a choice here. The nature of trauma, early childhood trauma, is we had no choice. But as an adult who's healing from trauma, we slow down and we begin to see what our choices are. And so instead of reacting immediately out of a trigger, there's a pause. And in that pause, we're able to know what's happening and then make different choices, which will actually create a different life for you.
Yeah, it does take that pause, that moment of reflection to kind of stand back and go, what is it that's, triggering me in a sense, right? And you can have the discussion with somebody else or just think about it. But I also think, I think the best way is to talk to somebody that you can trust and share that information so you can kind of look at it. So is there like an example that you experience in your life that you can share with others, that maybe could be dealing with something similar?
This will lead into really my memoir.
Mm.
um, because When we have stories that are hidden or that we're ashamed of, and maybe we've even forgotten or suppressed, most of our behavior and even our thoughts are unconscious. Okay. To to become more present and to become more conscious of the decisions that you're making takes healing work when you've had trauma. And so before I began working with my coach, that I met in 2019, she's a narrative focused trauma care coach. I had this belief, this deep held belief about who I was as a little girl and especially as a teenage girl that I had named bad and dangerous. And, you know, my perception of her was this felt feeling of disgust. And one day I'm working with my trauma coach and I was telling her a story about my teenage girl. And the word that I wanted to use was she was a slut. She was so promiscuous. And she just leaned in because she had already heard a lot of my early childhood trauma stories. And she just leaned in and she said, "Oh, do you mean that fearful girl?" And Jonathan, I was speechless. I had never looked at my teenage girl thinking that a lot of the things that she was doing was to soothe and quiet the fear that she held in her body of being alone.
Mm.
I mean, it's why my memoir is called With You Now. And if you knew my early childhood stories, you would know you're gonna have to read my memoir to get all of it. You would know that I was left alone a lot as a little girl,
Mhm.
where fear would overtake my body. Like, I have a story in there of being so afraid, I'm probably like 10, 11, that I peed my pants. I was so afraid. There was so much shame in that when I looked back on that. But now I just see her and I feel so much compassion for her. And
What were you f
yeah, go ahead.
what were you afraid of?
That's a good question, but it really was that I was gonna be harmed. I had been sexually abused by this point. Um, uh, so I was like 10 or 11 in that story.
Mhm.
And the nature of being physically left alone felt like somebody was gonna harm me
Mm.
or somebody was going to break in. I was just talking to my childhood best friend the other day, and she goes, "Do you remember that big house that you used to live in?" I mean, it was a massive house. And she said, "I remember how afraid you were when you were alone in it." We didn't have cell phones back then. When you were alone, you were alone.
Yeah.
So that was the nature of it, just being physically left alone as a little girl.
So, I know there's a lot we can unpack and, people go back into their past, their childhood trauma. So, do you feel like there was a sense of not being loved in a certain way because somebody wasn't around you, and that's why you had this fear?
Mhm. I don't know if you think too much as a young child, "Am I being loved?" The cognitive process of that isn't usually what a child is dwelling on. It's how they feel, right? I feel afraid. I feel dismissed. I feel like I'm too much. So children don't process. It's usually in looking back and looking at the stories that you have to imagine what that was like for you. Now, one thing that can be helpful for my clients and was helpful for me is do you have children? Look at them at 6 years old. Imagine them in that scene. Or, for me, I have 5 grandchildren, and I remember when my children became the age that I knew I started being sexually abused. You can get a clearer sense because what happens is we become adults and we have all these adaptations on how we cope and how we survive, and we really lose touch of what it was really like for us. as a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old that would have been left alone in a home at night. When I think about doing that with my children, like, there's no way in hell.
Yeah.
So you have to get a clearer sense of what was that like for you?
Yeah, and so your parents or whatever, you think that was all passed down, and that's how they treated you because they thought that was right?
Well, definitely, both my mom and dad had a lot of generational trauma, and, I mean, that's a whole 'nother story that I can probably write a book about, but
Mm,
between my mom and dad, I witnessed 10 divorces and 10 remarriages, and I had over 20 step-siblings growing up
mm.
that came and went out of my life. So, I remember when I first started hearing about the effects of childhood trauma. So, Jonathan, I could tell you so much, right, of these experiences I had, but I had to stop and think, huh, did I have trauma? Now I'm like, oh, I get it when you don't look back. Oh, no, I had, because there were still good times, right? There were still fun times. So I've had people ask, well, how do you know if you do? Like, how do you know if you have unresolved wounds, unhealed wounds that are still under the radar, really controlling your behavior, controlling your life? And for me, it's been not only for my own story, but now all the clients that I've worked with, there's something that's still causing you pain. You're still bumping up, whether it's these relationships that always seem to end, whether, gosh, I'm disconnected from my adult children and I don't know why. Whether it's an addiction, towards drugs, alcohol, sex, there's something that sometimes we just think, well, this is just who I am and this is the way it's always going to be. And I say it doesn't have to be. It absolutely doesn't have to be. You have a pain that's actually controlling your life.
Yeah, so we consider some things in our past as normal, right? And
Mhm.
that's how it's supposed to be. So how does somebody, you know, like yourself and other people coming to you for help, how do we wake up? Like, how do we go, okay, there's something different, right? I need to make a change. What was that like for you? You could share your personal experience and maybe some others that you came across. But I know what mine was like, because I had a life-changing event and two in 1 year, and so that allowed me to kind of wake up in a sense. But what do you see in your experience, your professional experience?
First, let me just say that might be one of my favorite questions I've ever been asked. How do we wake up? How do we wake up when we don't even know we're asleep? Or how do we, like, am I fully alive? Am I waking up with a sense of meaning and purpose? Depression and anxiety is so prevalent. Like, it's hard to meet someone who's not struggling in some way. So the way I woke up, and I like saying waking up. I said this in another podcast who happened to be with your girlfriend, Giselle. I use a lot of ing words because we don't ever completely arrive, right? That doesn't mean we don't grow, we're not transformed, we experience more freedom, but, like, I'm continually waking up. But we can have a big wake-up call, and it's usually from a failure or a pain or a failed relationship or a death or something. For me, it was a time in my life where a reenactment pattern was potentially coming back around. It was the mountain, okay? I saw it. I'm 49 at this time. So we're talking, I've had decades of these reenactment patterns that would come back around. But this time I saw it, I recognized it, and I had this big, like, oh no, Jesus, please. I can't go here again. And I reached out and got help. I was scrolling Facebook one day and I saw this ad for a story workshop. So the modality I use that when I work with my clients and that was used with me is called story work. from Dan and Becky Allender out of the Allender Center, and I did this story workshop. It was just a weekend. It was a so by the time that the workshop was held, COVID had hit, so it had to be online. Otherwise, I was flying to Seattle. And that workshop woke me up so much, Jonathan, because I had read Dan Allender's book in my mid-20s, and I had known that I had been sexually abused, but when I read that book, I was still looking at it from a 30,000 view. Like, I still couldn't see my girl. I couldn't see my little girl who had been abused by her grandfather, many times sexually abused, and I couldn't see that teenage girl with any sense of compassion. Like, of course, you started numbing at a young age. Your body held so much pain and so much fear. I mean, alcohol numbed it, drugs numbed it, sex numbed it. And then I started hearing all these stories, and I started hearing, "Oh, there's a reason why you keep doing what you're doing, and it's not because you're bad. It's not because you're broken or damaged. It's because you have unresolved wounds still living in every cell of your body." So, yeah, that story workshop woke me up like, "Oh my gosh, if this is true, this could change my life." And it did.
And what was the next step for you then?
It took years. I mean, it took several years sitting in the presence of attuned witnesses that could see what I couldn't see. I mean, it took a lot of humility. It took a lot of courage to not only see what had been done to me and the magnitude of how that affected me, body, soul, and spirit, but then it took courage to see how my wounding was coming out sideways and wounding other people. And this is where the humility comes in, right? It's easy. Well, I don't want to say it's easy, but we can show up and tell our stories of how we were wounded, how we were abused. Some people are going to be called to do that publicly and or to write about it. Some people it's just no one will ever know, but you still need someone, an attuned witness to your life. But what that's like is you have other interpreters of those stories instead of your own. Does that make sense? Like, you're telling yourself one thing, but then these people who you begin to share your stories with are seeing things that you couldn't see. And so to be able to name, like, "And this is how these wounds are hurting people that I love." I mean, it takes a lot of humility. It's easy
Yeah,
it's easier to say, "Oh, yeah, these people did these things to me."
yeah, I can see what you're saying. And so I know you mentioned the mountain point of view for, how for yourself, right? But I can see those people listening, whatever you're sharing, having that mountain point of view and like zooming out and say, okay, this is the problem. This is what we can help you with. Exactly. And listening to what you have to share. And so is that the time that you started opening up about your past?
Yeah, that's the time because, I like to say the only thing that will heal us or get us in the doorway is
Hmm.
a felt sense of compassion, kindness. Because when we began sharing our stories, not only what we went through, but even what we've done through that, uh, many people have, "I'm too much. I'm being judged." People lean back instead of lean in and say, "Tell me more. I want to understand what life was like for you." And so that's what happened for me was that I had people leaning in. "Oh, I want to know that girl. Tell me more." But it was this felt sense of compassion that made me feel safe enough to be honest. So I brought that present day struggle that was happening in 2019. I brought that thing into the light with these people that I knew were caring for me, and it was the first time that that was disrupted, and I didn't go into the full reenactment pattern.
Yeah. And would you consider them as strangers to you because you didn't know them fully and completely?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that we can trust how we feel in someone's presence. So you may know someone for 20 years that you would never share your stories with because in their presence, you have a sense that you're either too much for them or not enough, or they're not trustworthy. So I don't know if I would call them strangers because I didn't just jump in and start sharing my stories right away. But I was around them enough to know, like, oh, these people, it's not about being perfect, but they're safe. Like, the felt sense of compassion made me so curious. Like, wow, did I just find my people that can listen to the depths of my stories and not flinch or want to run away?
Yeah, and you mentioned it's not about being perfect, but I wrote it's about making progress.
Mm.
So it's you sharing your past with somebody, opening up, and that allowed you to become so much better to share it with somebody else. And trustworthy or not, those people, some might take it in a different direction. And I mentioned strangers, and I know how you mentioned your friends, family. For me, I had nobody really to turn to when things were changing for me. And so I reached out to a community of men I probably share with you. And, they were strangers to me, but they allowed that space to share and they were present and they were able to help me along my journey.
Did they feel safe to you in the beginning?
It was new for me. So I had to connect with them. I had to get to know who they were, where they are at in their journey. Some were going down the same path I went down, some already went through it, and some didn't go through it at all. And I had to give myself space. For the problem I had, I was wrapped up in my head, and for me not to get that out of my head, I was gonna go crazy, right?
Okay.
And that's why I suggest to people to reach out to people, listen to the podcast, know that you're not alone, and find those communities or whatever it is, just
Mhm.
to get it out of your head, because that's the problem, I think. And maybe you can say yes or no to this, that we get stuck in our own minds and we just circle and we pick out the littlest things and we make a big deal about it, and it's not that, right? And so when you're talking to somebody and they're listening, and even if they're not saying anything back to you, you kind of, oh yeah, why am I thinking that? Like that's not right. Like it doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
But it's just so for me it was the little stuff, and then connecting with these guys, it was new for me, right? So I had to give myself some space, and they allowed that space. They dealt with other men before, and yeah, it was uncomfortable in the beginning, but I had nobody else to turn to, and I'm like, well, let's just let's just see how this goes,
I
right?
think our journeys are parallel here. Like, I'm really resonating with what you're saying.
Mhm.
Feel like you actually explained it, just with some more clarity. So thank you for sharing that. Eh, did you feel courageous during that time, or were you like, I'm just going to free fall into this?
I felt like it was just taking the little steps, right? And so I listened to a podcast. They had a community of men, and so it was that first step to say, jump on a call to see if I'm a good fit to be part of this group, right? And then it was like, who can I connect with? So the guy knew my story, and then he wound up, okay, try connecting with this person, this person, this person. And then it just expanded from there. And so I'd never met any of these guys in person, but it was all messages. It was all, Zoom calls and stuff like that that allowed me that space to just, it was like a lifeline. So, like, if you ever came across, oh, I don't know what to do, there's this problem going on or this thought going on, you just reach out to somebody, right? And if it wasn't that one person pick up, you try another one. So that's how I looked at it. And it reciprocated, right? So they came back to me, even though I don't think I was this like expert or anything, but I was there just to listen. We just go back and forth on things. But that's how it worked for me. It was just the little steps. It wasn't like, boom, I'm gonna jump right in and this is what it's gonna become. But it allowed me that space
True
that
for my people. I think
How's
that's
that?
I think that's true for most people, the little steps. I'm being tempted to interview you right now because I wanna know your story.
Well, it's all over. I mean, feel free to go browsing
Okay.
around. But and I say on my podcast too and other people's podcasts and I spoke about it on stage. But that's what and I think that's what's worked for you. And so you got to the age of 49, if
Mhm,
I'm correct, and when you started opening up. A lot of us look at life at 49 or older, like we're too old, we can't change, we can't become a better person. But I think that's your prime. I think you've learned so much through your life thinking that this is the right thing to do when it's really not. And I think for you, and this is what I'm feeling, this is what I think. You started to open up, you started to find your true self, true self, your worth, and you were able to make a change at the age of 49. And so I would love for you to expand a little bit on that, if you could, if you notice any age patterns where people start opening up at different times?
mhm. That's a great question because I'm sitting here thinking of my dad. So my dad I was my dad's caregiver in 2018, and he died of cancer, but I moved in with him, and I was with him every day for the last 90 days of his life. So I was a witness of his life in his last 90 days daily, which led to a lot of conversations on his deathbed. My dad had stories that hadn't been told. Gosh, I'm gonna get emotional here. But as I was sitting with my dad and he started telling me these stories, his whole life began to make more sense to me, Jonathan. Like my dad had been sexually abused. Jonathan, I didn't know that. Like things just became um just more real in the sense of it's like my dad, one day I'm caring for my dad and I was doing all the things and I was like, "Oh, this is my dad is like becoming more like my brother." Because he had this desire to get some of these stories into the light. So, Jonathan, I got to weep with my dad. I got to hold my dad. It was so profound for me. So, really, he went before me because then is when I had the huge transformation in my life. But people go to their grave. So, I volunteer in hospice now because of that experience with my dad, and people take shame to the grave. People take their fears to the grave. So I had this prayer one time, and here's how it sounded: God, how free can I be before I die? And how free can I help other people be before they die? Because I saw my dad on his, last 90 days, even though he didn't have time to live that out and walk that out, I saw what happened for him to get it out, and that's exactly what you just said. We've got to get it out of our heads, we've got to get it out of our bodies, and it's why I do what I do today.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned what he passed away from, but do you believe that everything that he had built up produced all that stress, maybe anxiety, depression, and everything that could have led to the illness, his death, and everything else? Um, that would
I
be a question.
definitely think he had other issues besides cancer, but his cancer was specific to asbestos.
Oh, okay.
So it was very specific,
Mhm.
very rare, by the way. But he had other issues that I do believe that trauma, stress breaks down our immune system, and we can definitely have health issues over unhealed wounds. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what I was getting to is, do you think that things could have changed? He could have lived a little bit longer, has and we don't know this, but, if he opened up and, maybe he felt more alive, right? And, the thing is you shared on his deathbed, like, why I hate for us all to wait till that time, right? Uh
Well, that's why you're doing what you're doing, and it's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly, right, I know, but and so we can only touch so many people, and that's why I encourage others to start a podcast, et cetera, because there's only so many people I could take on, there's only so many people you could take on, and so we just have to help encourage each other to keep moving forward and helping other people.
When you listen to the podcast that I shared with Giselle, I was on
Mhm,
your girlfriend's podcast, I said, "There can't be enough healers in the world." Like, there's let's not have any competition there.
mhm.
Let's invite everybody to heal so they can become those wounded healers. I don't know if you've heard that term. I believe it was Henry Nouwen. He was a Catholic priest who, um, gosh, I've just read so much of his stuff, but he talks about, being a wounded healer. Because if we're meeting people in spaces that we haven't yet healed from or gone through ourselves, it doesn't have to be the exact same thing. We don't feel that empathy piece. Like we don't feel the pain. I've sat with clients before that have told their stories. Now I know how to regulate. I know how to care for myself. I know how to not make it about me, but I can get really stirred up emotionally when I'm feeling the pain that somebody went through, and I may have some tears at times. I've had people look at me, and this was my experience when my coach had tears on my behalf. I was like, "Gosh, I've never felt this. Whatever's happening in me, I've never seen the mirror of my pain coming out through somebody else's eyes."
Mm.
And I'm feeling it now. I could cry again thinking about how much that opened up something in me to say, "Oh, I think I'm safe and I think I can share anything of my past and not be judged, not be misunderstood." And so
So
I love it when it happens with my clients.
now that is great. So somebody feels for you and they accept you for who you are, no matter what you went through. And, we get to that point where we start opening up and they can see you and see how much you can become so much better. Right. And so that's where we, as we're looking for help, have to see that too and accept that yeah, we can become better. It's gonna and like we spoke about progress, it's gonna take those little steps. Right.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
We flipped in the script here. So what we're doing.
I'm just curious because I'm actually thinking about my boyfriend,
Okay.
and he's taken a deep dive in his own healing journey,
Mhm.
kind of in that same age range. I think you had asked me about that, just how like, what happens for people at certain ages, and why do we all of a sudden like, "Oh gosh, I've gotta pause here and take some time to heal." But he's so tender and raw. I mean, he's tender anyway, but so, we can be talking about something, and when I see his emotion about it, it just overwhelms me because it is a little different for guys, or at least in my experience, because a lot of men were raised as boys to not show their emotion or that it's weakness or, big boys don't cry, if you will. But man,
Mhm.
when I see a man be in touch with their emotions in that way, and I'm not saying it has to be through tears, but there's something of a sense that you're connecting with your emotions. So, what was that like for you as a man? I don't know, maybe you didn't have that messaging growing up, but were there tears for you in the beginning?
Tears for me in the beginning of my
When you were
life
waking
changing?
like, you were waking up and you were like, "Wow, there's
Yeah.
a reason why I am the way that I am, and it's not because I'm bad."
Yeah. So life's checkmark, right? So I believed that I had to get a job, like education, all that stuff, family, etc. And so like I was checking the boxes along the path of what I was taught, what I was believed to have a good life, right? And I focused on certain people rather than myself. And so I closed up in a sense. I became a mold. I was working, coming home, rinse and repeat, right? And so if I didn't go through what I went through, I wouldn't be waking up. I wouldn't be here doing this, what I am doing today. And I said waking, right? I didn't say woke. Uh, yeah. And so I had a challenge, like, connecting with people not family, not friends, but strangers, people I had acquaintances with, the community of men I spoke about, and start sharing, and, like, it was different. And so I I mentioned this, a couple times. I consider a guy a coach, I paid him to go through a course towards the end before, my kid's mother said the word divorce, right? And so I bawled for the first 2 times that I was on that call, and that wasn't the only time I cried, but I bawled because I didn't know what was gonna happen. I didn't know where things were going. I never wanted a divorce. I never knew, that, my parents were divorced when I was a kid, but they lived with each other, and I didn't know that till I was, like, 19,
Mm.
right? And then, my whole dad's side got divorced, and I was like, "Ah, that's nothing I never want. I'll never make that happen," and, you know, I'm not saying that I made it happen, you know, the way it went, but, there's 2 sides to every story. So, yeah, I cried, those 2 times, and then there was 4 sessions, and then the last 2, I was there, more composed and everything, and he said the same thing, and so when that word came, I was able to accept it, and let's move on with life. And then after that, it was just how do I handle things? And, I wasn't all about bawling and everything, but it was about, sharing everything I dealt with, my story and stuff with the right people in a sense, strangers I never met at some events thereafter. And now, going on podcasts and stuff. It took me about a year to start sharing on podcasts because I didn't know how my kids are teenagers now, but I didn't want them to find something and think I'm trying to push it on somebody else, and that wasn't the case. So I didn't want to say the wrong things. And so I think now, not that they know everything, but I think now we're at that point where they can accept it if they find it, right? And they can learn. So I want them to be young adults and learn that life doesn't have to be this way. I want you to be yourselves. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to get the job. You don't have to go down that path. I just want you to go down the right path that's best for you, for what feels right for you. Um, so as
Isn't it amazing, Jonathan? I just have to say, I don't even know you, but, like, I'm so moved by how you've taken that, and now your kids, not that they won't have bumps in life, but you're giving something to them that you needed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I needed a space to share at the podcast, whatever, all that stuff. So I can only hope and pray that they can come to me for anything and not feel ashamed or, looking down on them or anything like that. So I try to I try to express that, their kids are teenagers. They basically don't want anything to do with you at the moment. But I hope there's that opportunity that they know that there's a
I have a
space.
feeling there will be.
uh But yeah, for men, it's hard to open up. It really is. And so I don't know about your boyfriend in his past or anything like that. And it comes to the right woman. You're gonna give him space, not judge him, ask questions. I do believe that what I've heard is you give him a 4-second window before he opens, and he's gonna open up and spill the beans. It's because we tend to shut down right away. Is she really gonna listen to me? Does she really wanna know?
Mhm.
These are the questions we run in our heads. Is she just asking me just to be nice, and just want to have a little conversation? Because I know on the flip side, a woman wants to go, this is what happened today, and we have to sit there and go, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And that's just how communication works. I didn't know all that until I went through the coaching stuff I was learning before the word divorce came out. Right. And it all makes sense to me.
Mhm.
So we have to understand each other as far as communicating and getting to know each other, different sexes and stuff.
Yeah, well, at this stage in life, so, he went through a divorce. I was married 35 years and went through a divorce,
Mhm.
and I stayed single for a year and did a lot of grieving and healing, and I actually thought I may just be single for the rest of my life because I don't think I'll ever meet a man that in my mind, because I had gone so deep in my work, that had the capacity to sit in these spaces of curiosity and kindness and non-judgment, and I wanna know you. But I did find a man, or I should say he found me, and I said to him early on in our relationship that I had heard this guy speak years and years ago, and he said, "The best thing you can do for your partner, your spouse, is to get a PhD in their childhood." And I'm telling you, sometimes we'll sit on the couch for hours and just share stories. And
That's great.
it is the most, excuse me, sexy, romantic foreplay that you could ever have.
Right. Yeah, and to sit
Sorry, I didn't
there.
know if we should go there, but it is.
Well, I think that's good. I think it's good for a relationship because you don't wanna hide anything, and, if there's those triggers that come up, you have to go, "Hey, this is what I'm feeling right now because of this. Not that it's you, but this is why I'm feeling it." And so they c the right partner will sit there and understand and not judge and, you know, just wanna have that peace, that space for you to open up because for you to be closed up after all those years of everything that you went through and not be able to share that with your partner, that's just gonna make it even harder.
Mhm.
So, it sounds like you find the right guy, you found the right person that you can share things with, and he's willing to accept it, and you're reciprocating as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. I hope I answered your question. I
A whole new world when you're in a partnership like that.
Yes, exactly, it is, and that's the partnerships we need, but we don't know that that's what we're supposed to have, because we go down that path in life of, this is how it's supposed to look like because your parents and everything else, it just, transpires and makes you who you are and what you believe in.
Yeah, sometimes I literally wake up and think, "Am I dreaming?"
Yeah, this is great, right? Yeah.
But every day, it's consistent every day, and, that I know we're not doing a podcast on relationships, but this is so where I know the trajectory of where I'm headed
Mhm.
is gonna be in this space more of love, sex, relationships, and it is that consistency, right? That every day, this is what you can expect. This is what you're gonna get. There again, it's not about perfection, but it's about passion, it's about consistency, it's about commitment, it's about safety. When you have 2 people who feel safe and secure in a relationship, the sky is the limit on how close you can get because we never stop discovering one another. Like, it is literally endless on how we get to know each other.
Yeah, and you can start with that by dealing with the trauma you had in the past.
Absolutely. I always say there's seasons that we have to go back to move forward.
Yeah. So what you're doing to help others is great. Navigating through whatever they went through in the past, know what that trauma is, how to become a better version of themselves, making those little steps to progress along the way. Candace, how does somebody find your memoir? Because I don't know what that's all about. I don't know what's in there. It's top secret. But how does somebody find your memoir? How do they connect with you and learn more about you, work with you, and you can help them through their trauma?
Mhm. So my memoir is called With You Now, An Invitation to Heal Your Inner Child. I think that's the subtitle. That's horrible. I'm pretty sure that's it. And it's on Amazon, it's on Audible, so I've recorded it, and it's on Kindle. And then I also have a website that's getting ready to be revamped, but it's just candacerather.com for now. But that'll be changing, or they can reach out to email CandaceGRather.com, which if you can put in your show notes,
Mhm.
they can find me there. But I am, taking one-on-one coaching clients right now, but I'm also creating some other things that I'm excited about. I'm going to be working with your girlfriend.
There you go. Awesome.
Yes.
That's great.
So
Yeah,
let's
get
give her a shout out, Giselle.
yeah.
And what she does to help people get their stories out there, authors, and to highlight this truth that you and I are speaking about, that you can have a different life. You can create the life that you long for and dream of.
Yeah.
I always say it's not easy, but it is possible.
Yeah. Yeah, and she does great work. So, I mean, she's putting the anthology together for Life's Checkmark. I know she's done other anthologies, her own books, other people's books. And so she's got a lot of new things coming up, and for I know what she's helping you with a little bit too. So
Yeah.
excited about that. I'm excited. I this has been fun. I loved where the conversation went. I love, it's so weird when somebody asks me questions on my own podcast, because I'm like, this is not about me, but okay. And it's not about me, it's about others, right? So I always share my past to hopefully help others. And I know that's what you're doing here as well. But it does build us up as individuals. We grow as you and I are talking with one another here. We're both growing inside. We could take whatever we want from this conversation. So I ask everybody at the end, one question. What are three key things you've learned and used along your journey?
Three key things that I've used along my journey. Well, to have a different life, you have to make different decisions. So I've learned to slow down, especially when my body's getting activated with fear, panic. Some people lean more towards shutdown and go into depression and can't even get out of bed. But before that happens, and I'm like, oh, this is what my body feels like when, something's happening. So I just slow down and notice. It's really kind of simple. Slow down, notice, remember the story, and then you're able to say, "Oh, I don't have to react right now. I can slow down and decide how do I want to respond?" And it's changed my life because I was a very quick, you know, I was quick to react, quick to respond. And so, yeah, just 3 things. Slow down, notice, and then decide what choice you wanna make.
That's great. Yeah, and to me, to sum it up, it sounds like controlling your emotions, right? See how
Not
you're
letting your emotions dictate your behavior.
exactly, and we're so quick to let that happen, unfortunately. So I think that's awesome. Is real quick, is that something you just picked up on after 49 years that you kinda
Well, it's actually something that was called out into me in a very kind, compassionate way because the nature of trauma is too much, too fast, too soon.
mhm,
So when we get triggered and we go into our trauma, which is in our implicit memory, when people just say, "You have a choice, you can choose." Yes, and you will choose you will choose things that feel familiar over what's best for you at times. And so I don't know if I answered your question there.
no, you're good. Yeah, so it's just past experiences.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Candace, this has been awesome. Like I said a little bit there, I love to go back and forth, changing it up a little bit,
Well,
and that's what it's
again someday, maybe on my podcast.
yeah, of course. I'm always looking. I'm all about getting out there and helping others. But I love the conversation, so that's why I love doing what I do and see, things go down different paths, and that's why I don't wanna have a specific topic all the time, but
Thank you.
I am grateful that we met. I'm glad that you came on, and I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Of course.